Nice to meet
Nice
you.
to meet
Andy
you.
Colleen.
All right. Call to order, Planning Commission 12/17, December 17th, 2024. Let's start with, do you want to do introduction first or roll call first?
Let's do roll call.
Okay, roll call. Val Chef here, Brianna,
Present.
Megan. Vincent here. AJ.
Present.
All right. So let's start with introductions. Mandy Culhane, is going to be joining us for a presentation tonight. Do you want to take a moment to introduce yourself and your background?
Sure. Can everyone hear me okay? I'm Mandy Culhane. I'm an attorney with the law firm of GRB Law. I've been there for a little over 20 years now, which is hard to believe or say out loud. But the Planning Commission brought me on to review some open legal issues regarding the amended zoning ordinance, and I'm happy to be here. And I'll go through some of my conclusions for everybody in a little bit.
All right, with that in mind, I can't abstain, I watched it, but the minutes from the last meeting, 11/19, which I was not in attendance of. Have you guys had a chance to review the memo?
Yes.
Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second. Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, minutes are approved from 11/19/2024. Okay, so we're gonna move into the kind of the main session here. We're gonna talk about the draft zoning code. We are thrilled to have Mandy on board to clarify some of the questions that have come up over the past 2 months, I guess. Around, legal capacity, the framework in which we can and cannot respond. Ultimately, the planning commission is a recommendation body. We will not be approving the plan. We will be approving a motion at some point to recommend or not recommend that council adopt the zoning plan. In order for us to do our due diligence, we've run into a couple of blockers that did require having a legal opinion. So Mandy is on board now. She has kind of a presentation on some of the high level notes of this, and then we'll go into the kind of the 5 kind of points of order areas and unpack those in our discussion. Following that, we have a couple of other agenda items. If anyone has do they have the agendas? The agenda is going to have our business development subcommittee. We'll be having an update, the planning commission update on the trail feasibility study. And then we'll turn it over to you all for public comment. There is a sign up sheet up here. It's come to our attention that in the world of electronic media, when you come up to, we need you to sign in. This is only for business owners and local residents to speak at this. However, we ask for an address on this. When you introduce yourself, we do not ask you to put your address into the electronic record, if you will. So I'm Eric. I don't have to say that I live at 78 Belvedere Street, right? So that's it. With that, I'm going to turn things over to Mandy. She's going to go over the high level, then we'll dig into some of the details underneath it.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll just give kind of a general overview of the issues that I looked into. I'm happy to answer any of the planning commission's questions. So the first overarching issue that I looked into was the accessory dwelling units. The question posed is whether or not the borough must permit them somewhere within the jurisdiction. The general answer is no, they're not a type of housing that is required to be allowed somewhere in the borough, as compared to multifamily housing, for example, which must be required or permitted somewhere. So then the follow-up question to the accessory dwelling unit issue is, do we want to permit them somewhere? Do we want to regulate them? And if the answer to that is yes, how do we do that? I'm aware that they do exist currently. However, even the current zoning ordinance does not permit accessory dwelling units. So those that are out there are illegal uses at this point. So something that the planning commission needs to discuss is how you want to treat the existing ADUs going forward. If they are going to continue to be allowed and no enforcement is going to take place, we should address that in the amended zoning ordinance to just confirm their status and what that means going forward as far as cleaning them up, maintaining them. There is proposed language that would prohibit any new ADUs from being constructed. So no current or new accessory buildings could be turned into ADUs. So I think that's something that's going to be discussed amongst the members. The second issue is an issue of downzoning, and downzoning is when a zoning classification is made more strict. For example, a mixed use zoning district is changed to a strictly residential. Generally, the borough may not exclude a certain type of housing altogether from the jurisdiction. So like I mentioned earlier, multifamily housing must be permitted somewhere in the borough. As long as the zoning code provides for that somewhere, that is not unconstitutional or invalid. The next question then is there enough provision for it? There's case law that most of the case law strikes down attempts to narrow the location of multifamily housing so much to where in effect it's really not permitted at all, because it's not reasonable in the small sections of the municipality where it is permitted on paper. So it's a fair share test is what they call it when the zoning code permits it. But there is a question of whether it is permitted enough. So does the zoning code permit a fair share of this type multifamily housing within the borough? And so the courts would look at things like how many square feet of the borough are multifamily houses permitted? What is the current population growth and what is the anticipated population growth? Where is the multifamily housing? Where has it traditionally been? Is there demand for it? Things like that. So from a legal perspective, we just want to make sure that any changes that are made to the zoning ordinance are going to satisfy that fair share test or not increase the risk of making the zoning ordinance unconstitutional because it does not satisfy the fair share test. The third issue was parking. The commission's looking at making parking requirements more flexible. I personally just handled a case on behalf of another client where they did the same thing. This was challenged by an existing business owner. And it went up to the Commonwealth Court, and the court, there's no problem with making parking requirements more flexible. The court just it made clear that any changes that are less restrictive are going to apply to everybody, all current uses and new uses. So that's just something for the borough to consider as they are making those parking requirements more flexible, what potential impact that could have. And I'm happy to answer any questions about those issues or anything else.
Awesome. Any immediate reaction?
Yeah, I have a question. Yeah, so thanks for putting this together, Mandy. I had a question on the downzoning exclusionary zoning concerns where, so in the first paragraph, page 3, where you talk about, further, the Pennsylvania courts have consistently invalidated downzoning when it's intended to impede or effectively zone out population growth. So I feel like that kind of relates to some of the requests that are currently under consideration by the planning commission. Do you think that that those requests would potentially be like, if we approve them or recommended them for approval, we would be at risk for like the courts invalidating it if somebody brought suit.
I do have concerns that the more you shrink the available space for multifamily housing or anything other than single family housing, it increases the risk that that ordinance could be found invalid and unconstitutional.
Okay.
And so I think that's something that needs to be considered.
Okay, thank you, Mandy.
All right, so Mike has put together 4 kind of actionable conversation prompts for us. In reaction to this. So we're gonna go over these 5 bullets, I should say, now, and, you know, kind of intertwine with that Q&A, Mandy, as well as kind of leading into general discussion, that you all have. So if you can, I can draw you to it. They're not numbered, they're just bullets. They're on page 3
Go on the screen.
of the screen right now. That's makes my life easier. So these are the unresolved topics, right? That require us to kind of weigh in on, get some opinion on, and come to some conclusion on. As I know it, these are really the last remaining kind of big items that need resolved before we can get to what I'll call a semi-final draft of the zoning plan. So if we have resolution, if we have some agreement on what this is, and we have kind of a good legal stake in it, what we'll be able to do is task Mike and company to be able to start pulling together final maps, final verbiage, and by final, I don't mean end of the story final, but a finalized draft version of it. So that we can come back into this body, perhaps even if we can get resolution tonight, I don't know, and I'm not gonna project it, as soon as the next appropriate meeting, for us to decide where we stand on making a recommendation. I don't believe that we're in a position this evening with these items unreconciled and with the need to update the final maps, the final verbiage, et cetera. We're not in a position tonight where we can make a recommendation to council to be able to move forward. So we're at least one more meeting. I'm not going to say we are definitely one, but we are at least one more meeting before we can get to even having that conversation. So I'm gonna, for those that can't see it or don't have a copy, we're gonna talk about the risk of not citing ADUs, and that's what we just talked about. The identified risks and the fair share test. We're gonna talk about that a little bit. The down zoning areas, there are 4 following this. There are 4 specific areas within the municipality that we're going to talk through. Maybe it's easy to start with the 3rd one on here first, because the other ones might be a little bit longer discussion. The 3rd one on here is the noise ordinance kind of reconciliation with the existing code. Because we can't adopt a zoning plan that's already out of whack with our existing code in the municipality. So and then we're going to talk about parking, the parking sections again within the packet, and additional feedback that we've received specifically in the near overlay district around Thomas Street by the shopping area. So. With that in mind, if you guys don't mind, can we talk about number 3, the middle bullet first? The noise restriction. Were you able to look into whether or not what's in the zoning is in agreement with the existing ordinances that the borough has?
Yes, I did look at the noise ordinance, which generally just defines what noises are impermissible and unnecessary. The zoning ordinance imposes certain decibel levels, and that's totally consistent. That's fine. There is there's one area that is a little inconsistent with the noise ordinance, and that's talking about construction activities. Basically, the proposed zoning code exempts construction and or maintenance activities from the decibel limitations between the hours of 7 a.m. and 9 p.m. The noise ordinance, provides for construction or repair of buildings, lands, and streets. And that's between the hours of 7 a.m. and 8 p.m. And then there's on Sunday, it's 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. unless there's an emergency situation. So I think those two sections can be meshed just by saying that include construction or repair of buildings, lands, and streets. So broaden the language in the zoning ordinance. And you can still say they're exempt as long as they're otherwise in compliance with the noise ordinance would be my recommendation.
Is it possible that the zoning simply refers to the existing ordinance that we have and doesn't spell it out in the zoning? And that way, if there was ever a change in terms of, because I don't hear him complaining about it to council at meetings, et cetera. I don't hear any objections to it. But that would mean that zoning wouldn't need to be updated because it's just pointing as reference to the current ordinance. So if the ordinance gets changed, the main ordinance gets changed, by default, zoning is pointing at whatever that change may be. Is that a way to reconcile the two?
Yeah, potentially. But at that point, you wouldn't be imposing those decibel limits, but that's up to the borough if that's something that's they want to do or not.
I have two questions. One's a process question is, my understanding is ordinances follow zoning. So that basically you zone and then ordinances are then used to enforce the zone. And is that correct? Okay, good thing I asked.
The zoning regulates the land, the use of land, but you have other ordinances for all kinds of other things and
It's not exclusive. It's
right.
exclusionary.
And the noise is under the
Okay,
noise is under the nuisance chapter of the
okay.
larger code.
And then this, so hence your question makes sense for the ordinance to stay and just have the speak. Changes to be allowed.
Yeah, I'm just looking for simplicity. If it's not broke, I don't see a need to fix it. However, another alternative, that you kind of bring up here is, can we make a recommendation perhaps to council? That we change the zoning to just pass through whatever it says in the council ordinance, right? But make a recommendation to council that we adopt the more detail that's been added into the zoning work that's been done, right? This is modern work. Obviously, our ordinance has not been updated, I'm sure, in some time. This is modern work that's kind of fed by the consultants and best practices. They're making that recommendation to us to adopt it. So it seems like, it's good to potentially consider. So if we recommend to council that we're gonna remove it from the plan and just refer to it in the borough ordinance, but with the recommendation that they update the ordinance to include the more extensive language. Is that kind of a logical solution?
I like that.
Yep, I agree.
I think I agree. My
Talk
only,
it out. Yeah.
my only question is, I do recall that people brought up the issues of decibel and other in the meetings. So I just want to make sure we're not saying we haven't heard from them when we have.
Okay.
So just so long as what we're doing, I believe the notes reflect what the requests were. Is that right?
Yeah.
So if we go with that, then I'm comfortable with it. But those requests were made based on the input in the citizen comments and discussions that we had several meetings ago.
Makes perfect sense. Can we find those recommendations?
Yeah.
And then if we made a motion to do that which we just discussed, we would need to get a motion, a second, and an approval. So is that clear to everybody what we're? So I'll entertain a motion. AJ, I'll second the motion. Okay, let's do a roll call on it. Rihanna, sorry,
Yes.
Vince,
Yep, yes,
AJ,
Yes.
Val Chef, yes. Okay,
got it.
so we're good. Okay, so we're gonna move back to the top, ADUs down zoning and then, the parking, and then go into the Thomas Street and the, what was formerly called the overlay district, but that's not being used anymore, so. I don't know why.
So which one's next?
So just to the top, let's just move to the top, because I thought that was kind of the easiest one. I think the rest of these might be a little bit, so the risk of not citing ADUs within the code. So what I heard is probably the first time I heard that, so if I'm hearing you right, man, we're currently, we have ADUs in the borough. But because we don't have anything in our current zoning ordinance, they're illegal. Is that true?
Technically, yes.
Technically, yes. And so whatever would get adopted in the new zoning, would those be grandfathered or would those become kind of contentious for enforcement, if you will?
Right, without addressing them specifically, they will remain illegal uses. They won't benefit as a non-conforming use. They will just still be illegal uses. So I think that needs to be discussed.
Okay, so we have lots of, in the current zoning update that we've been entertaining, there's a non-insignificant portion of land in the municipality that would be non-conforming to it. And just because they're non-conforming doesn't make it illegal. They're just non-conforming. There's nothing we can do. You can't make your parcel bigger, right? Or if there are setbacks for your houses that exist, you can't change. So that is understood. So this would be different then. This would be, right now, they're illegal. If we leave ADUs out of the plan, ADUs are still no longer, are still not permitted. And therefore, these become subject to some sort of enforcement or other action, I suppose, at some point with the adoption of the new plan or even without it, correct?
Correct. Now, property owners may have some arguments such as estoppel. If I've had my ADU for 30 years
Right.
and no one's ever done anything about it, that property owner might be able to argue that the ignoring it for so long has vested a right, but that's going to depend on a case by case basis.
Which say, it begs the question of, do we grandfather in those who have?
Right. One
That
option would be to
one
recognize
option
them.
For those people who,
Correct.
those that exist. To just grandfather them in. What are the implications of grandfathering them in?
If they are recognized as permitted under the new ordinance, the existing ones, not new ones, they would obtain non-conforming use status, which means that they would have the same rights as all the other non-conforming uses to continue that use, to natural expansion of the use. They could remodel, and that, I know that's part of the language is,
Yeah.
they would have to be allowed to remodel within the regulations of the non-conforming uses.
Because that was one of my other questions we talked about is in your write-up was about the
Yes.
not permitted. Can you just go over that again to clarify what?
Sure. So there's been a request to add certain language that no new or remodeled accessory building may be used as an accessory dwelling unit. And that means if I have a garage, I can't convert it to an accessory dwelling unit after the ordinance is amended. However, that would also prohibit me who has a current ADU from remodeling my ADU. If I am granted non-conforming use status, I have to be allowed to remodel that within the regulations of the non-conforming uses. There are some limitations on what you can do with your non-conforming use, but generally you have the right to continue it, remodel it, clean it up if it's becoming deteriorated.
Which would be
The rec-
beneficial.
The language that was recommended to us actually came from the OFMA code, but that's the code. That's the language we were talking about right there. That's highlighted on the screen.
And even that language, it suggests that the current ADUs are permitted because it's dealing with new ones.
Yeah, the biggest concern I, when I read it is that it's an equitable question, right? We don't know what we don't know. Have we actually gone and looked at every single
No,
dwelling in the
no.
town and identified a list of, these are the absolute positive list of ADUs? You have some idea, I'm sure, of some, but there's no way to say with authority that this is the complete and totality of said list. So if there were something, we leave it out, sounds great. But also leave the ability for someone with something that's established and the ability within I don't know, could it be like a period of time? They have 3 years from the adoption to file for this nonconformity status, or so much time that would be reasonable for anybody who has one of these to find out that, hey, I need to get this registered as a non-conforming thing. And if they don't, then they would fall subject to, something like this, where if they go to remodel it 4 years from now and they haven't registered as non-conforming, well, then it's kind of on them, because everything that's been done has been done to try and help them, but they haven't helped themselves. Is that a possibility? Is that something that could be done?
I mean, I have concerns about people who may already have what would be considered an ADU because they aren't currently expressly prohibited. I feel like it would be unfair to have those people all of a sudden be doing something that's against the zoning ordinance. So I would be in favor of adding this language, but then making sure that we state that existing ADUs, as of the state, are a conforming use. I feel like that would be the most fair thing to do, while also addressing concerns that people have and not permitting any additional ADUs. I will note, though, I could also see someone who buys a property thinking then that it's unfair that someone else, was able to do something that they're not able to. But I think that grandfathering it in is the best approach.
So could it be grandfathered in an open-ended capacity? Where if they can prove that they have had this established ADU by the definition of ADU. Prior to the zoning adoption, that they could apply for nonconformity at any time. So long as they can show that it's been established before the zoning adoption. That would prevent anything new. But it would allow those that have something already to be able to continue on with the remodel or whatever they need to without creating a burden on them. But that would mean that anybody looking to buy a property with the idea of putting an ADU in the background, well, that's buyer beware. To me,
Right.
in my opinion, that's buyer beware. You just need to know what you're buying. That's part of the real estate deal, right? So you need to have an agent that can direct you on what the legality is, that you can't put a skyscraper here, you can't put an ADU in the background, you can't put a Murphy's Mart on this property or whatever. So is that
would probably be an easier way to manage, because we wouldn't have to know where everyone was. They would have to prove it to us. And utilities are a pretty good way to do that, typically, because you'll have utility bills going back, and if you can't produce them, then your ADU isn't valid.
Would the ADU have separate utilities?
A lot of times, most of the time. I don't know that every time it would, but a lot of times it will.
I wouldn't think they would.
Yeah.
Well, they have to have buried utilities, that's for sure, right? That's a building code, not an ADU or a zoning code.
Yeah, but if they were built illegally, then they could have been, everything could have been done illegally. I don't know.
Right, yeah, I mean, it seems like any remodel that anybody would want to do, they would be forced to bring it up in compliance with the building code.
Right, yeah.
Because remember, zoning isn't the only game in town. Building code is kind of the big important one, and that's uniformly adopted and applied. And you can't have an accessory dwelling unit, even an illegal one, that doesn't have underground plumbing and doesn't have underground utilities in general. And so if you go to update it and you don't have that, well, I guess would they be able to apply because they're non-conforming? They're quote unquote grandfathered in, maybe not the right word, grandfathered in. And if they want to do the remodel, then yeah, they gotta bury the utility, they gotta do they gotta bring it up to code, that's just part of the
They'd have to
game.
do that anyway.
Right, right.
I mean, I think it sounds kind of difficult to prove. I think there's no clear way, so, my one concern, but I am in favor of grandfathering in existing ones. Do we have like a ballpark? 10?
I know of 4. I don't know how many more there are. There's probably not that many more, but I don't know how many there are.
I think there'll be a handful of vacant garage apartments that have sat vacant through numerous owners.
Right,
So new property owners, that'll be a thing in all likelihood. That's a handful, not a whole lot. I think the magic word here is remodeled and not
Right, that's the
not
question
allowing
mark.
these units to go into a blight status because they
Correct.
can't fix them up.
Yeah.
right,
So
That I
we solve
think
for
is-
that then.
right. So do we have agreement on this? Is that where we are, or?
Do we all understand what Mike just said though, relative to what the wording would be? Was there relative to remodel, Mike?
Yeah, Mandy, if we remove the word remodeled, does that solve the issue or is it more complicated than that?
I think it should be made more clear that the current ones are going to be given non-conforming use status and treated as non-conforming uses. If you took out the word remodeled, I can interpret it that way and infer that, but I think for transparency, it makes more sense to state it.
Just make it clear.
And we
Because
can,
then they know they're subject to the non-conforming use regulations.
and we can noodle on this language and bring language back as a recommendation to the meeting. That way we're not trying to create language right here.
And let's make sure we're all clear on intent.
Yeah.
Yep,
Yep.
And that's what we need to be clear about, because I'm gonna get confused by different language later. I wanna walk out of here tonight knowing exactly what we agreed to.
So it's preventing the creation of any new or remodeled accessory building units, but allowing current ones to be repaired and they would have to prove that they've had.
Right, and they will be considered non-conforming use.
Who will make that determination?
We'll have to figure out a way to effectively make that determination. I'm not sure.
That becomes an enforcement issue and an execution issue,
Yep.
right? We just have to make sure we'll have a way to do.
I mean, we could have, maybe we create a series of steps of like what the burden of proof would be.
Right.
We can noodle on that idea too.
I like the idea of tasking you all with the creation of the language. Because that puts you in a position where the language is created by you in a way that on the other end of it, you can think through enforcement, right? Because we aren't practitioners, you are. And so whatever it is that you come up with to recommend to us, you're gonna feel comfortable with because you did it, right? That it'll have implementability on the backside of it, right? So this would allow existing to continue forward. It would make the path of new impossible. And it would make the path of some sort of remodeling defined by some sort of rubric or schedule, right?
That sounds right. Does that sound right to you guys?
Yeah,
Yeah.
sounds good.
Cool.
Got it.
Okay,
So question before we move on,
Yep.
Mandy, then that just takes care of, we've just answered your 2 questions, including the middle paragraph of page 2. Yes. Okay, good.
Actually, I have a quick question as well for Mandy. You cite Senate Bill 1126 on page 1, which the state would require ADUs within zoning ordinances for all municipalities. If that passes, then borough simply goes back and updates our zoning code.
Right.
Okay.
The other question I have, which is not germane to the decision, but is just again one to understand, is when we talked earlier about the different things that happen when the courts look at the various factors, they look at percentage of multifamily, et cetera. Based on the small number of ADUs that we have, we don't know how many there are, but it's not extensive, and the relatively reasonable, more than reasonable amount of multi-dwelling units. it feels like that would not be an issue in this borough. Now, you can't say, but I'm just saying,
The, uh, the issue of does the borough allow for enough multifamily?
multifamily.
Get the current, map and the proposed map, I think would pass muster.
Correct.
Great,
Good,
super.
good there.
Okay, well, let's then move into the next point of order. The risk of downzoning, right? There are 4 open downzoning requests that have come back from our work and engaging with the public and talking about this and all the work that, so of all that is left in terms of a downzoning concern, it is these 4 and only these 4 that remain with some area concern. So we can go to, why don't we just start with Mildred? Right, since it's up right now. So the concern here is moving from transit-oriented development to CR.
Now, this map, I want to clarify that this map is not correct. These in this purple, all these have been removed already. We just didn't have an updated map. So we're just considering these 2 at this point. And these 2 are businesses, and they were purchased in the last 3 years.
Right. So these businesses, so if CR was adopted for them, then they'd be in jeopardy, right?
I mean, that's a legal question, not mine.
Is that true?
In jeopardy as far as,
Well, it's not that they're non-conforming, they're simply not permissible.
They currently are. They're
They would-
currently permissed.
so they would
Permitted.
become non-conforming if
They would be-
this request was granted.
So they would be unable to, would they be able to sell their property for continued commercial use at some point down the road?
Continued the current use, so within the non-conforming use regulations, so there are. It can go on, but there are limitations, regulations, that limit what you can do with your property as a non-conforming use.
So what we're saying is all of the current housing stock, single and multifamily housing stock that's on division has already been moved to CR. And that seems to make sense to everybody. and
Right.
We vetted that.
Right.
We don't see pushback there. The concern here is the 2 properties when you come down to Noble, one being the funeral home, the other the Craftonian hall, right?
Right.
So if they were to be moved underneath CR, then that would be problematic for them in terms of being able to sell their business to someone who didn't want to use it as a funeral home, but wanted to keep it as a business.
They would be
Great big
taking
bed and
rights away from
breakfast out of it. you know?
It would be thank you, that's what it is taking rights as landowners away from them, right? Okay.
Then why don't we just leave it in the CTOD?
Yeah, that'd be our recommendation. Yeah.
Okay. I think that's an easy call.
It makes all the sense in the world to me. I don't see any reason why I would. Just out of curiosity, in the updated map, when you wrap around, so that corridor then, starting at the Crafton, coming down to Nobles and heading down towards the gas station, what have you, the downtown complex, right? Is that all CTOD?
Yes.
Right, so it's just really extending it up to the corner, so because the funeral home's true address is on Division. It's a problem, and because the Craftonian Hall just kind of slipped into it. That's what it is, so by keeping those CTOD, we're not impacting anybody that lives in a home. We're not taking away any landowners' rights, it kind of makes it all, kind of puts a bow on it, right?
Yep.
Just so we know, the concern was the prevention of any new building on any of the properties along Division Street for they to be served.
But we've already changed the rest of the regions.
Okay, so that's what I just want to make
Right.
sure.
Yeah, that has already been changed. This map is not correct in that.
Right,
That
but
has
the-
already been changed.
but
So
the
the
wording-
only thing we're asking about is the only thing we're asking about is 2 buildings at the end.
I get it.
Yeah.
What I'm checking is that if my memory serves me correctly, that the request was to, and I'm very easily could be wrong. That it was the CTOD was the concern because it would allow businesses elsewhere. And so I thought we had said that we were going to have it be CR because it's already multi on that street and
We did CR for the rest of the store.
correct.
Yeah.
Correct. That's why I just want to make sure. The rest of the street is CR. So we're
Correct.
only talking about the zoning of these two buildings.
Those two
Correct.
properties,
Those
but
two
yes,
properties,
yes,
yeah.
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, with the stars. Yep. Okay. We don't need to make a recommendation. You're gonna update it. That's not
We
going.
can make a motion on approving or.
We need to make a motion because
Right,
it's
not-
like
yeah.
already, yeah, we're not making a change,
Okay.
so.
Right.
Okay.
Awesome. Okay, so then this next one, so these parcels on South Grandview backing up to bookended by Linwood and down the promenade, you have the map up? Yep. All right. So moving this from the current state, which is CR. Or is it, am I getting this backwards?
No, that's what the request is. Move it from the current state CR to NR.
And by doing that, it limits the rights of the people who currently live there in what capacity?
There are several already, if we look at, let's see here, it's scroll one. Yeah, this is it. So there are several other types of housing in this thing. So we would be removing their ability to, and there are some vacant lots there too that could be built on. So there, you are changing the ability, you're limiting the ability of property owners who already have property there to do what they've already done.
Specifically, they're multifamily, right? And so by moving it to NR, it would prevent people from being able to, on the vacant lot, for example, do anything but a single family home. However, we did adopt some access. We changed something that kind of made that a little bit more difficult in terms of the frontage that you needed.
Right, and that
The
was for the
60 feet.
Maxwell area. We limited, we changed, but it's for all of CR. So
Right.
if you want to build more than a two-family house, if you want to build multifamily, anything above two-family, you have to have a 60-foot wide lot. So we increased the lot width to eliminate large multifamilies and then.
And so that effectively does what the request was, because if we don't move it to NR, because you can't take away people's rights, from what I'm hearing, the 60-foot restriction, none of these make it, so they could never build.
I didn't check it for these, so I can't say none of it, but I can say it does prevent more properties from being
Okay.
made into multifamily.
So you see what I'm saying? The Maxwell provision, if any of these are 60-foot, yeah, they could theoretically, but I mean, I've walked there so many times, I can't imagine how
I
many.
don't
of them
think
meet.
there are, but I don't want to say.
There's like
'cause I
that
didn't-
one long one, yeah, there might be one.
Yeah.
And it's on a hillside, so I don't know how much is gonna be permissible there anyway. So there's other things in the favor, but the reality is, we're kind of, our hands are tied in honoring the request to move it to NR because of the persistence, the existence of the dwellings that are already multifamily.
Yeah, at this time, I'm not in favor of moving forward with these requests. I don't think it's in line with the principles of the zoning ordinance. It would
Correct.
create too many non-conforming uses. It's going to kind of go against the whole purpose of trying to maintain the character. But this definitely isn't the final time we're going to discuss this. So I'm sure we'll hear from residents about, some of the reasons that they're requesting this at this time. I haven't heard enough to kind of make me change what I think is best on this, but definitely want to hear from the public.
Well, So. Where we are is we're looking for an adoptable plan. And. We need to put language in that we're comfortable in adopting. So at some point, we have to make a decision.
Right, yeah, so just to clarify, I mean, like, at this time, I'm like, right now, what we have on, like, what we're seeing here is like what we have, the requests are to change what's already in the proposed zoning ordinance. So just to clarify my
I
comments,
see.
yeah, I'm not like,
So keep it
Yeah.
as CR.
correct, yeah.
I'm in step agreement. I don't know, again, I don't know if we need a motion because we're not changing anything. We did look at it. We've looked at various entities. We have an attorney giving us guidance that if you were to move the NR, you do put the borough in legal jeopardy. It's a true statement, right? Because of you're taking away rights from multifamily parcel owners that currently exist in this quadrant, whatever. Right? So we're good moving on. The next one is Belvedere.
Belvedere.
Good old Belvedere. Maybe we should just level it, payment. Street.
Many people said no, just say it.
Yeah, full disclosure, I live on Belvedere, so, yeah, so the idea is to move CR to NR, and right now. I'm still confused by this because I thought that the church and the parking lot. Are currently the equivalent currently of commercial.
They're not, no, not commercial, they're at a CR.
Okay,
The
so,
whole street, the whole side of the street is CR, or
so,
what is equivalent to CR, which is R2 right now, because they're
Right.
not technically CR.
and the other side is R1?
Mhm.
Oh, okay.
This is recommending, not, I mean, the request is for changing the current zoning from what it is, R2 to R1. And
Right,
this one does have quite a few properties. So these two are multifamily,
Right.
that's multifamily, that's multifamily. The only vacant lot is this lot right here, and it is currently buildable today. So if someone were to knock down that house and rebuild, they could build an apartment complex there right now.
nothing can stop them from doing that because it's land and it's their choice. Living across from it, I wouldn't be thrilled, but that's the way the ball bounces. I don't see a path forward to move the entire side of the street to neighborhood residential because you would take away the rights of the people who own those multifamily. Again, we're in the same jeopardy we were talking about up on Division, right? So is there any way to bifurcate that other than going house by house, which we were just talking about on Grandview? And that, to your point, Rihanna, that disrupts the whole point of doing all this because you're saying this parcel is this and this parcel is this, like hopscotch down the road. So it doesn't seem like you can't do it in pieces. It's
Now-
kind of an all or none.
I would have concerns about spot zoning at that point.
Yeah.
If there's no way to differentiate parcel A from parcel B and they're right next door to each other, you run the risk of that being spot zoning.
So could you just state what spot zoning is,
Oh.
that just for everybody's out?
Sure, yeah. Spot zoning is when a piece of land is rezoned either for the benefit or detriment of the property owner, but there's no justification for treating that parcel differently than the surrounding parcels. You consider it, you're creating an island of different zoning for really no valid zoning purpose.
Right, I hear what's being asked. But I don't see any way to say yes to that without putting the borough, in a place where, it wouldn't be good, right? Any other thoughts?
No, I mean, yeah, my earlier comments apply to all of these three decisions, to be honest.
Right, I'm with you on it. So is there anyone, Vince, AJ, any conflicting thoughts on just moving past this because we just don't have a legal footprint to make a change.
Well, I do still, I mean, we have public comment at the end. I do still want to hear from residents and kind of, hear what they have to say.
Yeah.
So, yeah, just to make it super clear, like at this time, I wouldn't be in favor of recommending a change, but I do want to hear from people, before we
For sure.
make a decision.
I agree.
Makes sense. All right. So then we're gonna move on, to the last, district here. Is this Thomas?
No, this is Maxwell,
Maxwell.
Maxwell Street, Glen Street.
Oh, this is Maxwell. Okay. Again, it's the same thing. We did make it burdensome for multifamily there. Because of the 60-foot berth that's required, and it eliminates. Basically the parcels that are there without some sort of changing of property lines. There just is no path forward. So the CR stands currently, but it behaves as an NR because it's just not
It doesn't
buildable.
behave as an NR, but it behaves as as the N2, or as the R2 does now.
Okay,
It doesn't change what's permitted now.
got it. Yeah, I don't see any other way to fix it. I mean. So, I understand the request, but I just. Any change in thoughts? No. Okay.
Jim, just please remind me. How is R2 different than CR?
It's basic, R2 is what exists right now. They're changing the name to CR. So I don't want to say, that's why I'm saying R2, because it's what it's currently zoned as R2. R2 and CR are very similar.
Well,
They're
that's what I
essentially-
thought.
they're
So you're,
essentially-
how I always understood it. So
Yeah,
your
I
last
just don't-
comment confused me.
Right, that's
It
because I
implied a
don't want to
difference
say
that I
that they're,
didn't know.
I don't want to, I want to be correct. And that is, they're not currently zoned CR, they're currently
Right.
zoned R2.
Right.
They will be CR in the new zoning code. I
But
just
that is
want to,
not a change.
no, it's not
That's
a
the
change,
difference. 'Cause
exactly.
the way you were wording it, I thought there was a change I was
No,
missing when I
it's not a
understood that
change.
it was just a labeling.
What would be the change would be down zoning.
Correct. That I
To
get.
NR, and by down zoning them, you are restricting the rights of landowners, which exposes the municipality for legal action, and we can't move forward in recommending a plan that's
Yeah.
as known.
And it's
legal
important to note that collectively, these four requests would eliminate all multifamily from the borough. If we did all of these requests, except for this one area right here would be the only area left CR, and we would definitely be in legal jeopardy at that point. If we downzone all these areas, we would have no multifamily approved in the borough after that.
All right,
Except for this one area right here. So,
it's not much. Okay. So with that, we've completed the review. Oh, yeah, Maxwell completes that. So then we're just on bullet 5 now, or the 5th bullet, which I call it 5. We've been looking for feedback around the recommendation from the consultants and the drafters of the zoning plan that takes into account what is the Thomas Street neighborhood and moving that to a different designation.
yeah, and I have feedback from why that decision was made in the steering committee prior to my time. And that is, every one of these uses is already non-conforming. So that entire street is non-conforming as it is. So making it commercial doesn't negatively affect it. In fact, it upzones everybody on that street. And I researched it. Half of those are rentals. Half of the houses on that street are already rentals, so they're owned by LLCs and private businesses. So that is an opportunity. There's commercial already on the opposite side of the street, and there's commercial behind it. So it just allows for them to have more value out of those properties essentially. Because those lot widths there are only 25 feet. So
There you go.
that's why everything on that street is not conforming. Even if we dropped it to 30 feet and 3,000 square feet, that whole street would still be.
Still be non-conforming because 25 feet.
Yep.
Okay. I'm not in favor of a change, to what the consultants and the professionals have recommended, because to me, it makes all the sense in the world because of what you just said. I don't know how to entertain, like, I mean, we'll hear from any feedback on Thomas Street, of whatever it is that I'm missing. Does anybody have any other comment about it, or can we be? All right, mission accomplished then.
Can you just hold on a second?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so currently it is
It is R2, right?
R2,
So it would be CR essentially,
and then it's moving to,
mixed use.
okay, and gotcha.
Yeah. Currently, you cannot, none of those houses could be rebuilt as they are currently, because they're all non-conforming. This doesn't change that. If you're non-conforming and you want to improve your house, you can still do that through the non-conforming process. You just wouldn't be able to completely rebuild if your house, if you tore your house down and then rebuilt it 3 years later, you wouldn't be able to do that.
So we're upgrading it to mixed use.
Exactly.
Gotcha. Okay.
And what are the potential concerns about that?
Change.
I think the initial concerns were that we were changing it from CR where it allowed single family homes. But that doesn't matter anyway, because they're still non-conforming. So that was the original concern. But every house on that street is non-conforming and nothing will change with this change.
So if you live there, you'll incur no changes. If you want to sell your property, or if you want to, you have more value and more options,
Yes.
in the future, if you do. But there's no change for those that choose to live there, which again, as you said, half of which are already, being used as commercially owned rental properties.
But potentially, couldn't a business be put into one of those?
Yep. And they already, across the street, they already have businesses all up and down that street.
Yeah,
So it would just be allowing businesses on the other side of the street.
yeah, so like that row of homes, some businesses could go in there potentially, and
Correct.
that could potentially negatively affect those residents. Potentially.
Yeah.
Okay. Have you had complaints from Thomas Street residents regarding businesses going in by them?
We've had complaints about one particular business on that street, but nothing beyond that. And that was a year ago and it hasn't occurred since. It was a parking issue and they have since dealt with it.
Okay, from an existing business. Got
For
it.
an existing business, exactly.
Okay.
Thank you.
I think we have clarification. So, moving into what I could foresee on the agenda for part C. We have, so we have some needs for updates. We're going to continue to look for public comment specifically on the things that we just discussed. We're going to get recommendations back on acceptable language, dealing with the ADU situation, so that it's compliant and, just stops it from happening going forward. And we've gone through each of the down zoning, they're kind of non-starters, because of, legal jeopardy. We've addressed the noise, ordinance. We're gonna get some feedback on the correct way to address that language and making a recommendation, to council. The last thing that we have, you already kind of spoke to it, was the parking, and conformance with the judicial case law, around the parking. The flexibility that we've created in the zoning draft, plan around parking. So I guess, is there still issue? I mean, I'm not.
I think we just need to add language to cover the consideration of the Oakmont.
Yeah, I think, if we are aware that it's going to apply to everybody, we want to just make sure that it's not going to create any traffic congestion or parking issues. So language like that could be added, that, the parking, minimums are reduced as long as, such reduction doesn't increase parking, traffic congestion or parking concerns. We can come up with something. The case law doesn't require that any amendment not have an impact on parking, but just from the borough's perspective, I think it would be that would be a beneficial thing to address if you are making the parking more flexible.
Okay, so with that, what we would be awaiting for the update, right? Would be a nearly complete semifinal, but nearly complete version that would have these language recommendations. You'll take a stab at the parking, the noise language, the ADU language, everything that we talked about tonight. So what we should anticipate reviewing for the next meeting is something that is accommodating to the feedback that we've heard and incorporating as much as we possibly can with legal parameters and potentially move forward with a final review in the next meeting, right?
Yep.
Okay. So we don't need a motion. There's no recommendation. You have some work to do, and we have some reviewing to do once you've done that, and we can move on. Good. 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 All right, so we have a couple of things. Finally, some exciting stuff. Okay. The Business Development Subcommittee. You guys were gonna talk a little bit about the progress that you've been making.
Well, actually, we talked last month about ideas, and we've not met since then.
Okay.
We talked about really tackling, moving into that at the first of the year.
Resources, help, assistance in any way. Have you?
The last request was that the borough consider that we may need some funding to support the kinds of initiatives that we would want to do for Shop Local.
Right.
And that was the main resource issue.
Right.
And between now and then, what we're really trying to do is make sure we have an aggregated, correct list of all businesses with names, address, place, location, everything that we need to have. Right now, we don't have a complete list. We're working on integrating what the borough has, what others.
Is there any way, like I think about like a Google Doc or something like that, for you to be able to share out into the world, what we think we know, to gain feedback of, oh, hey, I have a business. It's actually on, 33rd and Elm. It's not on here, right? Is there anything like that, or is that kind of like a next step once you get this draft together?
We have a lot of that information. It has not been updated and, because we have it from different sources. We have
Right.
it for building permits, we have it for tax
Right.
purposes, and those don't necessarily say what type of business it is or whatnot. So there's more work that
That's
needs
all
to
the
be done.
legwork that we do before we put it out
Right,
there. I mean,
exactly.
we feel like we have enough other data that we have to integrate it.
Right.
And then when we get that, we'll be in a position to move forward.
Yeah, because I remember the last go around, I did a Google map, right? And then looking at it, it was during COVID and we were on Zoom. And there were people coming out like, hey, I've got something over here, I've got something over here. It's just like a ton of like, oh, we didn't know, this is great. But we're not quite,
Capture them.
yeah, we're not quite there yet, but that's kind of, is there any resources that you need that are kind of straightforward? Before we get to that, is there anything that we can do from the commission to help the subcommittee? Not yet.
Yeah, I think we need to talk first.
Right.
To see what we have.
Right.
And then.
That's an update.
Yeah.
That's a wrap. Okay, number 6. Anyone comments on the subcommittee? Okay. Trails.
And of course, I would just say, and of course, we will be looking for input.
Oh, yeah.
For people to provide ideas, thoughts on how we want to move forward, help. We've got several folks who have already expressed some interest and so we'll be
It's fantastic.
anticipating that again, probably first quarter next year.
Great to see that move forward. That's awesome. Thank you for putting the work in on that. And me. Trails.
The trails study group has been selected. Everybody has received emails that was a part of that. And we will be setting up a meeting in January to start that process. So there were 16 people selected. And we moving forward soon. So exciting.
Who is the one of us that's on there?
Eric.
Is that you? I'm surprised.
Not a surprise. Yes. All the things I want to get done. That's the top of the list. Okay, so Is there anything else? We've covered a lot. Was there anything kind of rewind the tape we missed? Okay, so we're gonna turn it over now. There is a sign in. If you do want to speak and you have not signed in, I ask that you please sign in. If you're online on the Zoom, dear Lord, I hope you can hear us. It looks like there's some comments. Let's see.
There were a couple hands.
There's a couple of hands up. All right, why don't we start? Why don't we start to see if there's online comments, because we always have them go last. That's not fair. So they get to go first tonight.
Can you read it out loud because I'm
Yeah,
in an
I'll
angle that I
start.
can't see either.
Well, we don't, someone asked if we see the comments or hand raising. We don't respond to comments until the comment section is available at the end. So I'm just gonna say that I answered that live. Can we restrict business uses types? And I'm not sure what she's asking, but we can allow you to speak, Sarah, if you are still online. Let me see if you have your hand raised. That's raising my hand. Let me pull up the participants here.
I'm not gonna click my head anymore.
She does. I'll allow her to talk. Now, Sarah, I will be allowing you to talk now.
Okay.
All right, Sarah, you are free to go.
Thank you. Yes. So my question as a resident of Mildred Street was, and I understand both the legal implications of loss of value and also the challenges of rezoning, but also understanding that we have a large amount of rental in Crafton as a borough. And I believe that the attorney mentioned that at the beginning, that a percentage is looked at as well when litigation is considered. But understanding that the children of Mildred Street and Division Street are forced to catch a bus on Division and Noble because the buses cannot make it down. Is there a way that we can restrict the business use type so that they're not walking past a bar or a other type of business that would not be appropriate for children if the Craftonian and the funeral home were sold?
You would have to eliminate those from the entire zoning district from the table, if you're gonna do that.
And what would be the issue with doing that?
Well, you wouldn't want to eliminate bars from the entire central business district, which already has bars in it. And keep in mind too, the kids are going to school at 7 a.m. and leaving at 3. There's probably unlikely to have raucous bars at 3 p.m. during the day. But yeah, that's you wouldn't be able to just do that for those two properties.
That would be an example of spot zoning.
Exactly.
So, but you couldn't do it for all CR? You couldn't say that in CR you were not able to have a business with a liquor license?
In CR, you could, yes. But CR is already that way. CR does not allow bars as it is.
Okay, so right now they are the only two properties that are not CR. So there is no way, I guess what I'm asking is there's no way around us saying we 100% recognize that as a business owner, we want you to get the value in your business, but you would be restricted to X sale for these types of businesses in a CR zone.
Well, they're not in a CR zone.
If we move them to CR, I understand they're not currently.
Currently in CTOD and the risk of changing them, which they're already in a business district. They've been in a business district for the last, as long as I know, at least 20 years. So we would be downzoning, eventually limiting what a business owner or what the property owner could do with that property.
Yes, I understand that from a business perspective, and I'm asking you to consider it from a residential perspective and a parent perspective and a homeowner perspective.
Yeah, I fully understand. It's great feedback, but the reality is, they're currently businesses. We can't tell businesses what they can and cannot do to a great extent. They're there really, you know, the other option would be to keep them as CR or move them as CR, which then really reflects their rights as businesses to be able to pursue their business needs.
I'm just wondering if there are other, I mean, it is two businesses that are important. Important to the community, but the residential
Very
concerns are equally important. I'm wondering if there are other ways to address the concerns. I don't know what those are. But I think it would behoove us to think about what could be done to try to alleviate the concerns. And Sarah, could you speak more about the exact concern? I mean, the sort of the nuances of your concern?
Yes, so all of the children who currently reside on both Division and Mildred Street catch a bus right now, either at the corner of Division and Noble opposite the funeral home where there's a white stucco house, or across, as in the case of my son, across the street in front of Hirschberger Stover. So the buses aren't able to make it down Division Street or Mildred Street due to their size and the parking and the narrowness of the streets. And that's just an unfortunate reality of our borough. But I do have concerns as a resident and homeowner and parent that I do not want my son, even at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, walking past a bar, you know, or a strip club. I mean, it could really be, if there are no limits on it, it could really be any type of business, a smoke business. There's lots of businesses that I think any parent would not want their child to walk past on the way home from school. And if there was an alternate route, I wouldn't be here talking to you right now. There is no alternate route. That is where the buses have to drop off and pick up.
About if the bus was moved to Alice, but before we do that, Jim, you made a point about there are restrictions on certain types of business that you mentioned
Yeah,
that are not permissible.
correct. Adult bookstores are not permitted. Strip clubs would not be permitted. Those are adult type businesses. Those would not be permitted. Those
Okay.
are not the current draft, I should say. They're, you know, unless that changes. Like that.
Right. So there are some bookends to it that it wouldn't be an egregious business that would have an ability to move in there, but any other, you know, conforming business could. And I just wonder if this could be supported also by the school district in moving the bus route to pick up at Alice Street, which is a block up. Just routing the kids up Alice as opposed to up the last leg of Division.
Real quick before we do that, I mean, we're talking in
Yeah.
speculations.
Yep.
Currently, we have a thriving funeral home and
Right.
community hall. So at the moment, there is no need to be moving buses around.
Right.
We're speculating. So
Right.
you can clarify.
Okay. Well, we appreciate you bringing it up. Not sure what else we can do. We've entered into the record.
Yeah,
we're
and
gonna-
we typically don't have back and forth unless you want to, so that's up to you
That's
guys.
true, right,
So
in terms
just
of-
so you guys know.
Right.
Yep.
I don't wanna.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would recommend we only answer specific questions.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Next.
Lynn, I'm going to allow you to talk now. Please unmute yourself and go ahead.
Hi, thank you. I also live on Mildred Street and I agree with Sarah, not only for the kids, but my question is, if we're not able to restrict the businesses, regardless of the kids and regardless of the 7 a.m. to 3 p.m., as someone stated, and I apologize because I don't know your name and can't really see you. What about the residents? And so say we put a bar in there. So we're supposed to deal with the noise in the bar and drunk drivers at 2 a.m. in all hours of the evening. If you can put a bar right in the middle of a residential area, that's not a concern.
Well, I want to make clear, I completely understand your concern. That whole street has been allowed to have bars on it for at least 20 years. So it
But they
hasn't
don't.
happened.
But it doesn't. And I moved here because it doesn't. We moved here to Crafton for the neighborhood, not for the bar at the corner. And I'm assuming, do majority of you live in Crafton?
Yeah.
Yes.
Everyone here
We all
does.
live in
We all live in
Yes.
Crafton.
And would you want a bar 4 houses up from you? If you lived on Mildred Street?
Again, we're not supposed to be going back and
It's
forth. You can
speculation.
make your.
You don't have to go back and forth, but it should be something that you should take into consideration.
Thank you.
Next.
Yep, and I guess it's, people here, there's, these are all questions that we've answered. This is Molly from DCD who's made comments,
Okay.
but if we can, and I don't know when she was making them, so I don't wanna bring this up, so we have anybody else who wants to make comments at this point here in the room.
So anyone on the sign sheet, anyone?
I think Greg's on.
All right.
Question or two. You can you, yeah. We can leave it up at the desk.
Yep.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about.
Can you make sure that that mic is? up?
It goes off if you.
Yeah, my name is Ben Belmont. I live at 270 West Steuben Street. I actually live in one of the apartment complexes, which is in the last request to, was requested to change from CR to NR, and I don't want to see my home get changed to become non-conforming. There's a, like you said, there's, if you were to get rid of all the, if you were to adopt all the proposals, there would be hardly any multifamily places to live. And there are a lot of residents who would be kicked out of the borough altogether. Even with the non-conforming, a lot of people's rents would go sky high because you don't have properties where you can live, so you would be kicking so many people out of the community, and I just wanted to bring that up before to further justify not adopting those proposals.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment?
Greg Watt, yeah.
I don't know. Is that mic on?
Yeah, it is.
Loud and clear. Thanks, Greg.
Anyway, I have a couple quick points. The final draft, we're to be able to make sure that it gets to the public in plenty of time for review before it's comes to a meeting or whatever, so people have a
Yeah, and
long time. A lot of times we get stuff pretty close to the.
I just want to be super clear to you that we're a recommendation body.
Right.
We would only be recommending to council to then review.
Totally.
So the work that would happen between now and then may come down to be a 24-hour notice or so before the next meeting. We'll try and get it out and list it on the website as quickly as
We
possible.
can make sure we have it
Yeah.
out
Yeah.
longer than that. We can make sure that if we're updated, yeah. We can give it at least a week.
We've said we're not gonna rush this, so
Right.
let's
Yeah,
make sure the
right.
public has time. It
Yeah.
doesn't come down to a 24-hour and try and do better.
Right.
Takes
And
another
even
meeting,
for a
takes
new
another
draft, we
meeting.
could even make sure that it's 2 weeks, in
Right.
advance, because we haven't made that many changes in these last couple meetings, so we should be able to It's the maps. Yeah, Greg, we should have it too.
It's a good.
Public have plenty of.
Yeah,
time.
correct, absolutely.
People have, you guys work, you guys need time.
Right, yep.
Well, probably you guys input.
Yeah, that's why I didn't want to commit to say, oh, yeah, well, yeah, but yes,
No, no,
we're gonna,
And I'm just asking, I'm not looking.
we're not trying to slow walk anything. We're not trying to express track anything. We're just trying to continue to make progress against it. And when it's ready, it'll be pushed out there. If we hear in public comment that it would be nice before we made a recommendation to have a more review time, we're certainly happy to accommodate that.
Right. And I know the last time you've been had public engagement, help.
Yep.
To help.
Absolutely,
Understandable thing. The more the public understands the.
absolutely.
The other question I had was, I'm sure I'll go over my 3 minutes, but, the other question I had was, it said in the minutes about seek additional resident feedback for Thomas Street. Did we seek additional feedback? Did we go to the people? I thought it was ending up that we're supposed to, or we're supposed to talk to people on Thomas Street to get feedback, and it's written in here, seek additional resident feedback. I mean, we just kind of talked about this, but did anybody talk to anybody on?
Well, just like everybody else, they have had the opportunity. We have sent it to everybody in the borough. Everybody's had a post on. We have not specifically reached out because then we would be specifically reaching out to everybody in the borough. Why shouldn't we again do that again? And we've already done that. So that's why we didn't reach out specifically. And you know, and most of the owners in that, a good percentage of the owners on that street don't live on that street. So it's their rental, but no, we did not reach out to them.
People that live in those houses. Would you like me to walk up and down Thomas Street and ask them if they wanna?
We would not oppose.
Okay. I have a question about the 60-foot frontage. Can 2 adjoining lots be put together to accommodate the 60-foot requirement?
Only if you go through a subdivision ordinance, which is a pretty long process, and the borough can deny that for any reason at all. They don't have to, you don't have to allow a subdivision. But that is a 2-meeting public process and a fairly expensive, but yes, you can subdivide properties if you so desire. Yep.
So, okay.
Right.
So
Again, a very public
So
process.
there is that risk then that a say down on Grandview, a couple lots could be put together, and then what would be the height restriction of the building?
One
The
Grandview.
one, the area we were talking about.
The CR on Grandview,
South Grandview.
South Grandview.
So,
Let's have a start on it.
it's the same as it is now, 35 feet. 35.
35 feet,
Yep.
okay, so that would be, if it was. CR's 35 feet.
I think that's what it, I don't have it in front of me, but I'm pretty sure that's what it is.
Okay, because I'm just concerned about a high rise. You're taking multiple lots together and a developer coming in and grabbing multiple lots. And then subdividing them and putting in that high rise. You're not-
But CR is not, it doesn't allow for high rises.
All right, so. But that is a concern, that is still a concern of mine about taking several lots and putting them together to get around that 60-foot.
I mean, they could already do, just to make that clear, they could be doing that now.
Right.
Anybody, and they've tried in the past and been denied
Okay, so.
for other areas.
Right, I agree. So it's what can be done now, this ordinance or this zoning is we're really, what's being done now is being done now, but we're trying to establish what's going to be done in the future, so. I think AJ kind of equaled this, that, could these discussions be, about, how can we satisfy what the public is wanting or requesting? What not workarounds, but what kind of out of the box, or what kind of ways can we try to discuss, ways that the public's opinion can be satisfied? So if it is something that says, okay, well, we will have these many
lots non-conforming, well, then that's a minor risk, or what would be how can the non-conforming be worded so that it's really not hurting the
Greg, I appreciate your time. I thank you for coming out. What you're saying is clearly what we're here, to try and do. If you do have specific recommendations, you can reach out to Planning Commission email. You can reach out to the office. If there's specific things, we're here trying to find ways to accommodate these things. If there are additional ideas, we welcome them. Explicitly to the remaining pieces that we've addressed. They're working on language right now. Great opportunity for you to reach out to them, to us, to be able to come up with something so that in January, we can come back with more representation to it. And if you want to knock on my door, I'll walk Thomas Street with you. I'm sure that if anybody else would be welcome to join. So I thank you for coming. Is there any other speakers that we have here tonight?
James Mangan, easy question. We don't quite know exactly what we have in terms of like how many ADUs, how many things like that. Is there any process that we have either currently or that will be coming up that kind of keeps track, and we'll have like hard numbers to say, hey, this is what we have percentage wise, or this is, who's kind of keeping track of that?
The building inspector is the best process on the street. He walks just about every house that you guys know as houses turn or building permits are pulled. So he's aware of a handful, but I don't know if it's even possible to get an exact number without sending out a survey, but then people may not respond. So even that's hard. I know I've walked with the building inspector and seen 2 different garage apartment units that were not utilized when I'm out in the field with him. And we know of a few other active ADUs that are being utilized. So there's a handful out there. It's tough to tell how many.
Okay.
They would have to register.
And they would have to register. Thank you.
Just a quick question, maybe. The minimum
name?
lot width required. for
Excuse me, your
CR
name?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Barbara,
Can you-
Barbara, your name.
So far, sorry, Barb Basic, 79 Duncan. The minimum lot width required to construct multifamily houses in CR was shrunk, right, from the original,
Was increased
or was increased now,
to make it harder to do.
right, but it's still not the same, it's still smaller, right, or larger than it was when it was R2.
I would have to double check exactly the difference.
We haven't updated the October draft of the code is not updated. So what we're going off is the memo in your packet, but here's the things we need to update.
Yeah.
in the next-
Because I know it was increased to make it harder, but I don't think it was brought back to what it was originally when it was R2.
But we did prevent in any of the properties on Maxwell Street, it prevents them from having anything they don't have now. So now currently they're allowed to build single unit and multi-unit, single unit and duplexes. That has not changed. The way it was written, it was changed so that they cannot build multifamily there. If they were already allowed to build multifamily on one of those properties, they are still allowed.
Right, no, and I totally understand that.
Yeah.
And that's what I don't understand why. I understand that you can't make it harder right now from what it currently is, but there's no reason why we can't just keep the minimum lot requirements that.
Well, there is, because one of the goals of this, and this is stated in the comp plan and stated in the logistic plan, is to bring as many buildings into conformity as we can. So the goal is to build, because the more you bring into conformity, the easier it is for them to improve their buildings. They don't have to go through a long non-conformity process. They can just invest in their property. So we did what we did to try to accommodate your requests and like the residents on your street while still bringing more buildings back into compliance. We still have lots of lots that are only 30 feet wide, and even with the changes we've made, we are currently at about, if it goes forward the way it is right now, we would be taking from 48% non-conforming lots down to 25% non-conforming lots. There is a suggestion to take it to 30 feet and 3,000 square feet, and that would bring it down to 9,000. It would bring it down to only 12% of the residential lots in the borough are non-conforming, and that is a big goal of ours to decrease blight, to make it easier to invest in your own properties. While still accommodating what you guys have requested.
Right, okay, and then I guess that's the follow-up. Once the new draft is written, would there be a way to have another meeting like you had before where we all came in, sat down, talked to you, and just,
Yeah.
I think that's the best way to,
Yeah, we can do that.
Yep.
thank you.
All right, thank you.
Mark.
Any other speaker? We have one more. All right.
Just had a quick request with the previous draft that was issued. Mike, I believe you pulled together a document that showed the changes from the existing ordinance versus the newest one. If we could get a summary together for the issuance of the new final draft, that would be very helpful for those of us who are laymen and don't necessarily do ordinances on a regular basis. But yeah, as Greg said, we really appreciate the opportunity to be able to thoroughly review the document once it's issued. So, any time that you can afford the residents is something we absolutely appreciate. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
We have one more? Come on up.
I don't mean to be the dead horse. But the funeral parlor and the Crafton, if they go into the business district. Okay, everything's going swimmingly well, but I do know down the rocks, McDermott sold that property. And it's now a CVS, Walgreens, no, it's a Family Dollar store. So if McDermott would decide to sell this property, could the dollar store go in on that corner there?
Yes.
So the residential area, with the exception of these, could now have the Family Dollar right there.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. And my second question is, I'm really sorry, but I don't understand about the parking. Are we decreasing the parking requirements for the borough?
We're simplifying them wholesale. They are very complicated right now, and it has led to massive parking lots where you don't need them. Most of the parking issues in the borough are caused because houses were built before parking requirements even existed. And one of the biggest impediments to business development is requiring too much parking. It has been an issue in every city in the US. It's an issue here. And yes, we're trying to simplify it. Yep.
So requiring less parking.
It's not necessarily less. For some, it'll be the same. For some, it'll be less. It really, because the way it's written now, there's all these detailed differences, and what we're trying to say is that there's more flexibility and the developers can work with us if they want to open a business. In the residential areas, it's basically the same. It's only in the business areas where we've loosened up and made it more flexible.
So only in the business areas, not in the restaurant.
Correct. That's it.
Thank you.
Awesome. I thank you. Oh, we have one more. Yep. Cool.
Addresses on the sheet. I deeply appreciate everyone's work on this. For some of the comments in this meeting about people having enough time to understand the changes and impacts of the zoning update. As someone who designs research and community interventions, I have serious concerns about recommending a final draft to council without a final round of community input, as others have said. I would like to follow best practice and be proactively transparent, which helps everyone, particularly those who may be at a time or financial or literacy disadvantage, for example, to participate in this process and be aware of its impacts. I would like to formally request that once we have a final draft and final maps, that one, those be posted on the borough website, two, that a clear layman's language explanation of the changes, especially contentious items, and specifically of the assumed impacts per neighborhood be listed. And that three, there be a notification to every resident and business that there is a 30 to 60 day comment period with a request to participate in the review and feedback survey. Preferably, this would be by mailing to every residence, which I would be happy to subsidize if that's allowable. On the website and the mailing should be a link to a feedback mechanism such as a short survey that gathers both quantitative and limited qualitative information about participants' approval. I recommend items used in the survey such as, I understand the objectives of the zoning update, yes or no? I understand how the zoning update will affect my specific street and local neighborhood, yes or no? I understand how the zoning update will affect Crafton, yes or no? I have unanswered questions about the zoning update, yes or no? And I approve of this draft of the zoning update, yes or no? And allow public feedback. Ideally, the survey would request identifying information, so you can follow up. I could provide a survey mechanism for the process if that's not available, again, if that's allowable. The survey should include contact information if people do have questions and information about next steps and how to attend the planning commission and council meetings. I would also recommend, if we want to reach everyone, that this be advertised in a variety of ways, including tabling at local businesses such as grocery stores with a copy of the draft and the maps and some signage. Paper surveys should be made available to people who don't have internet. And special effort should be made to notify the people near the business district whose zone will change, such as people near Thomas Street. Finally, we should review and incorporate the feedback before a recommendation is made. And to the comment Jim made, there are many reasons to do a final verification and review. Some of which are, one, the opportunity to do final review. Stakeholders can verify that their input is understood and appropriately considered. Two, implementation preparation. So people need to know what the final version looks like. Whatever changes they may need to make. And three, engagement, helping to maintain trust by closing the feedback loop rather than leaving people wondering what happened after they provided input. If you think these suggestions are out of the purview of this commission, please recommend it. Council list. Thank you.
You got it, cool.
Linda Watts here. I just wondered, Mandy, will you be at all the planning commission meetings moving forward, or are you just here for this?
No,
To address-
well, as long as I'm invited back, I'll be back. Yes.
Have you been provided the data to evaluate if our current balance of housing type satisfies the fair share test?
Not yet.
Okay, so it's just a concept right now. We don't know where we're at, so we can't speak to them. I'm finding too many things where we don't have our arms around the numbers. That's one of the, and not no disrespect to you, but we just need to provide you with what you may need to make an informed recommendation. Like the number of businesses in the borough, who they are, like the ADU count. I'm sure we can just ask people, is there an ADU in your area? And they will raise their hands and say, yes, there's one there. And same goes for Airbnbs. I know they exist and I know people are concerned about them, but the masses will answer, and that will be half of the process, and then we can, you know, make that, clean up the data after that. But we keep saying we think there might be, or we have to do better and come with some numbers that really someone can say yes because we have 10 of these, or no because we have 2. So until then, it's all guesswork. So please try. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Linda. Go once. All right. Anything else from the plan commission? Okay, we're back to a regular schedule in January. So it'll be the 4th Tuesday of January. I thank you all for coming. We need a motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Seconded by AJ. All in favor?
August was second, the motion to adjourn.
Yeah, that's right.